Charlie the Unicorn is an animated short film series created by Jason Steele from the Film Cow YouTube channel. It follows the adventures of a unicorn named Charlie and his two whimsical companions, two unicorns known as Pink and Blue. The series is beloved for its absurd dark humor and the negative attitude of its protagonist, who has no choice but to put up with the ordeals Pink and Blue make him go through for fun. There appears to be some deeper meaning behind the absurdity of these events and the lack of autonomy the protagonist has over them. In Charlie the Unicorn, Capitalism as Apocalypse, the Sin Squad points out that Charlie's powerlessness against the events of the series mimics capitalist conditions. Charlie exists in a world which incessantly attempts to force him to leave his negative attitude and submit to its chaos. In the end, Charlie never bends the knee, but he also never becomes the hero that saves the world from its dire circumstances through his rebellion. Rather, he chooses to stay true to himself in a world that constantly tells him he's in the wrong. This decision, however, comes at the price of having to be on his own in an empty post-apocalyptic world. Despite the complex messages that can be derived from the series, Charlie the Unicorn retains its surrealist and comedic elements until the very end.
I will be staring back upon your beautiful body from the stars. Okay?
That was until December 24th, 2024, 3 years after the upload of the finale, when Film Cow released Charlie the Unicorn Enjoys a Moment of Peace. In this video, Charlie roams the lonely post-apocalyptic world after the events of the finale. As he wanders through a snowy city, he encounters a gate that leads into a dilapidated building somewhat reminiscent of a theater. Once inside, out of curiosity, he presses a big red button on the ground. A series of backdrop cutouts emerge from the bottom of a stage accompanied by music. They depict fish swimming under a starry night sky and birds flying around it. A bird then offers a fish a sphere that looks like the moon. After a few sequences with a multitude of these spheres, the fish appear inside of them, making them look like bubbles. Finally, the fish inside the bubbles float up towards the sky. Charlie then exclaims,
Wonderful.
And the video ends. It is a very beautiful, peaceful work of animation, and yet incredibly disruptive to the flow of the series. While the surrealist elements are still present, it contrasts heavily with the comedically absurd chaos the series is known for. The radical change in tone makes this animation feel special in a way that is almost anarchic, not just in relation to the Charlie the Unicorn series, but to contemporary media. Why? It's been a while since I read Disney animation The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, and I don't have the book with me at the moment to discuss in detail what I wanted to highlight from it, but off the top of my head, I remember one of the authors discussing how something as complex and ambiguous as the beginning of love could be portrayed in animation. It couldn't be through something as blatant as a kiss or a verbal declaration. This is where one of the authors mentioned the importance of a simple touch, like a hand on someone else's hand. This gives more emotional weight to something words cannot describe. The use of silence works in a similar way. Verbal communication is less effective when it comes to transmitting strong emotions. I'd just like to point out that my definition of silence excludes extra-diegetic music. I consider there is silence when there is no verbal communication between characters. An example of this can be found in 2002's Treasure Planet, where the moments with the most emotional tension and emotional fulfillment are transmitted by stares, simple body language, and silence. Treasure Planet follows the story of Jim Hawkins, a young man who dreams of sailing the galaxy. After acquiring a sphere with a treasure map, he joins the RLS Legacy crew with the goal of finding the planet where the treasure is hidden. During their voyage, they come across a black hole, which puts the crew in great peril of being swallowed up. Jim is tasked with securing the crew's lifelines. After they avert disaster, one of the crew members, Mr. Arrow, is gone after being swallowed up by the hole. A crew member named Scroop claims that his lifeline was not secured, so the captain is greatly disappointed in Jim. In reality, Jim had secured the lifelines, and it was Scroop who cut off Mr. Arrow's lifeline on purpose to get rid of him and possibly get a bigger share of the treasure. Jim believes himself to be responsible for Mr. Arrow's demise and feels like he can't do anything right. John Silver, a cook in charge of supervising Jim, reassures him and encourages him to not give up on his ambitions.
You listen to me, James Hawkins. You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helm and charge your own course. Stick to it, no matter the squalls. And when the time comes, you get the chance to really test the cut of your sails and show what you're made of. Well, I hope I'm there, catching some of the light coming off you that day.
And then Jim doesn't say anything for the rest of the scene. After they embrace, Jim just leaves and smiles at Silver, who smiles back at him.
I best be getting about my watch, and you'd best be getting some shut-eye.
This brief moment of silence highlights the emotional intensity of the scene. The sense of relief, hope, and gratitude Jim and the audience get from silence and body language would only be watered down by dialogue. I watched this movie when I was 5 years old. Last year, at 28, I gave it a second watch, and it struck me the same way Charlie the Unicorn Enjoys a Moment of Peace did. This movie had a certain charm that originated from an approach I found to be no longer in use. This is when I remembered We Don't Speak. We Don't Speak is a style of dialogue made popular by screenwriter Joss Whedon, best known for works like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Avengers. As Grafton Tanner argues in his book Foreverism, Whedon's style consists of characters being vaguely aware they are acting in a fiction, or at least familiar with the dramatic tropes of television. This is conveyed through constant dialogue centered around quips that acknowledge what is happening to the characters. Tanner explains, characters in Whedon's stories rarely stay silent, but rather make references assuming the other characters, and the audiences watching, know what they mean. There are countless examples of this style of writing in contemporary movies and TV shows.
I'm Peter, by the way.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names. I'm Spider-Man, then.
I'm a blood-sucking fiend. Look at my outfit.
Oh, they fly now!
They fly now? They fly now!
This is my timey-wimey detector. Goes ding when there's stuff.
They're behind me, aren't they?
You're gonna do that thing where you open up a weird-ass case of torture devices while inexplicably detailing your master plan and how I don't fit into it.
I'm building a better...
Seriously, you don't have to. Really? You're building a criminal empire because Daddy kicked you out of Janice Corp.
And you think this is a big fuck you, but in actuality, it's a very misguided attempt to win back his respect.
I get it.
By the way, someone wrote a rant about We Don't Speak on Reddit that I really enjoyed, and they commented that the style acts in self-defeating ways. They mentioned that characters, for example, only point out the absurdity or sentimentalism of the situation without really doing anything about it. In that way, the plot puts itself down by admitting its flaws and ridicules the audience's suspension of disbelief. Furthermore, the moments of silence that we get in these kinds of works are very rare. As Tanner points out, constant communication reduces the possibility of a meaningful point being made. And it seems like everyone in most contemporary movies and TV shows must keep talking and talking to prevent real feelings from sinking in. I was surprised that many people and critics found this sequel more likable than the first movie. Before I go on to my rant, let me highlight that I didn't dislike this movie. In fact, there are very few things I dislike besides what I'm about to discuss, and Judy's self-centeredness, which the movie somehow frames as positive and seems to blame Nick for not taking her side. But the more I think about this movie in hindsight, the more I dislike it. Just because of this one scene alone. That should tell you how this practically ruined my positive perception of it over time. It also doesn't help that this scene is among the most important and memorable ones in the entire movie. In the movie, Judy, Gary, and Povert are trying to locate the patent for the weather walls Gary's grandmother engineered. They want to demonstrate her work was plagiarized by Ebenezer Linksley. What Judy and Gary don't know is that Povert, who is part of the Linksley family, is planning to destroy it to earn his father's approval. When Povert betrays Judy and Gary, he injects Judy with snake venom and takes the antidote with him, leaving both alone in the freezing cold of the Tundra Town weather wall. Nick, who has just managed to escape prison, shows up just in time to fight Povert for the anti-venom, which Gary is able to catch and use to save Judy. Judy is able to recover just in time to save Nick from falling off a ledge. Gary helps them off the cliff, and Nick and Judy embrace while they talk over each other.
I was trying to get to you.
He told me that you were...
Nick says what has been evident to the audience all along, that he cares too much about Judy and is afraid of losing her. He says that he didn't say it before because he's emotionally insecure, something that should be evident to the audience due to his arrogant behavior and his past. Now, I'm not against Nick restating these things once again. I think it's a sweet lead-up to the moment of reconciliation because, as much as this should be evident to the audience, it's not evident to Judy. Judy then admits to her faults as well and reciprocates Nick's last statement, something that we also need to hear as an audience to know that Judy cares as much.
No one else in the world matters to me more than you do either.
This is the moment with the most emotional build-up, the moment that, if this movie had taken notes from Treasure Planet, is so emotionally tense that words are not enough to release it. The scene demands silence and tears, a hug, a kiss, a weather change, but instead we get more dialogue, which is made up of character exposition straight out of a character outline worksheet.
I have unresolved childhood trauma that I refuse to discuss because being vulnerable scares me.
I make dangerous choices because I have an unhealthy bunny hero complex.
And I didn't join the ZPD because I wanted to be a cop. I joined because I always wanted to be part of a pack. And the thought of losing you scares me because you're my pack.
I should never have left you, and I do need a herd of therapy animals, and I should have told you that you are the only partner I would ever want, because you're my fluffle. That's a bunch of rabbits!
The characters keep talking about their personal flaws in a way that feels too self-aware, and that is done for laughs, which closely resembles We Don't Speak. This takes away so much from this emotionally climatic moment because the audience is barely able to register the tenderness of these feelings before the movie tells them to not take it too seriously. The only moment in which we got a hug was also watered down by dialogue. I'm not against the decision to do the first hug, but I'm against its omission after the reconciliation. In my head, this moment plays after they confess their feelings for each other, and I bet it also does for many people. Furthermore, this moment of oversharing leans more on its awkwardness than on its power for resolution, and I hate that all this does is remind the audience that confessing feelings is merely a way to trauma dump on someone instead of a way to show remorse and character development.
Well, that is what we call an overshare.
In Charlie the Unicorn, Charlie is made to pull through a seemingly endless cycle of absurd events despite the serious situation of impending doom taking place throughout the series. When Doomsday finally does arrive, it brings the character and the audience a much-deserved moment of closure. This is what is currently lacking in media, and this is why the true finale of Charlie the Unicorn felt anarchic and refreshing to me, and what made my rewatch of Treasure Planet so special. Compare the Zootopia scene to what I've shown you in Treasure Planet, and you'll see how the emotional fulfillment and closure is lacking in Nick and Judy's confession, all because it has more dialogue. Silence and closure are increasingly more difficult to find in an endless sea of sequels, spin-offs, and remakes. In a similar way to Charlie, we're living in endless continuity, afraid that closure and silence make meaning sink in. It really bothered me that Zootopia 2 chose self-aware dialogue over merely visual language with emotional significance in the scene where it belonged the least. And this is obviously not an isolated incident. It affects all contemporary Disney movies. YouTuber Modern Girls discusses the same problem in her video, Disney's Adorkable Problem.
I also find this sort of "he's right behind me, isn't he?" type of joke, which always seems like it's queued up for a laugh track, are not only painfully on the nose, but can even completely derail an emotional moment. Whatever happened to letting the audience reflect on what's just happened?
Wait, how do I save a miracle?
It's okay to be irreverent, subversive, and awkward, but not when it derails the tone of a scene. This leads me to my last point. Why does media have to not take itself seriously in order to be taken seriously? Nowadays, it seems that a movie is considered good only when it doesn't take itself too seriously or when it knows what it is. I'm not against this quasi-meta approach if it's what works best for the movie, but using this as a measure for all media doesn't really work. On the contrary, it ruined my experience of Zootopia too, and I hope after this rant you're able to see why.